Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming out today. Day 3 here at the 2013 Nagios World Conference. Today the topic is from bare virtual metal to Nagios Core on Amazon Web Services. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Eric Loyd.
Thank you. So this presentation is going to be one of two things. It's going to either be very informative on how to do what it says, or it's going to fail miserably, and I'm going to do an hour of shadow puppets. So I only know 4 shadow puppets, so that might be kind of hard, so I hope this works. The actual overview, if you would, of what we're going to do is pretty straightforward. We'll talk a little bit about what AWS is and what you can do with it real quickly for those of you that aren't that familiar with it. We'll create a new server. We're going to install Nagios Core on it, and we're going to do whatever it says next. MK server and agent, which will be our sort of our shortcut to some instant monitoring. And we'll put I don't know how people say this. I call it TTYLTR. So we'll install TTYLTR out there, which is a command line Twitter client, basically. And then we'll break something, and we'll see how it works. And we'll, if all goes well, we'll hear the beep when I start getting Twitter alerts. And if you want, I think we'll be posting those Twitter alerts as the Smartbox user. So if you want to pretend you're part of our network operations team and get the Twitter alerts for the things that we break, you're welcome to follow Smartbox on Twitter if you've got the access here. And then that's it. So we'll skip the presentation because there isn't a whole lot of it, and we'll move on to actually doing some work. So the first thing that we need to do is get out of my ticketing system. We need to actually log into Amazon Web Services. Anybody not know what Amazon Web Services is? Okay, so I didn't see any hands raised. Does anybody actually use it, professionally or personally speaking? So a couple of hands go up. All right. So quickly, what AWS is Amazon's attempt to make yet more money in the world, as if they didn't have enough. And what they've done is they've gathered together this fine collection of virtualized, cloud-based services, everything from DNS management to storage to virtual private networking to, what else is up there? Content delivery network. If you ever go to a website and you see those images loading from multiple servers, that's a content delivery network that's finding the geographically closest server to where you're requesting the data, so it doesn't have to wait for data to travel across the planet in order to get to your web browser. So it does all these things, and you basically pay for what you use. So if you have your entire web application, database, application servers, web servers, storage servers, report servers, monitoring servers, all that stuff, you can put it on their platform in the cloud, and as you use it, you pay for it. If you don't need it, you turn it off and you don't pay for it. So you can dynamically adjust your footprint, if you would, kind of in real time with an API that they offer. And since you only pay for what you use, you can adjust your cost to match your actual demand, essentially. If you were in my talk yesterday, we talked about that using our voice over IP platform to dynamically adjust our calling capabilities using Amazon services. So the only thing we're really interested in is this EC2 Elastic Compute something. I don't remember what it stands for. I'm sorry. You can look it up. But Elastic Cloud Computing, there we go. ECC or EC squared or EC2, which is where it comes from. So this is basically virtualized servers. And the way that they work is you can create one. You can create one of various sizes, basically. So you can have small, medium, or large. And within those classifications, you can have, this is the fun part, right? You can have high memory usage or high CPU usage or high I/O usage servers and a whole bunch of different kind of sub-classifications. For all intents and purposes, they are, all intents and purposes, they are virtualized machines running in data centers that Amazon runs in various locations around the country and around the world. And so you can leverage their different, they call them zones, and you can leverage those different zones to provide redundancy, failover. You can make your own content delivery network if you want. If you've got customers on the West Coast, you can put data there. If you've got customers on the East Coast, at least of this country, you can put servers there. We're not here to really talk about what AWS provides other than we're going to use EC2 as the server that we're going to install Nagios on. So the reason that this is kind of useful, aside from the fact that I don't have to have a virtual server running on my box and I don't have to go buy a physical server to run Nagios on, is if you have a distributed system for your application or for your infrastructure where you do have multiple geographical locations, you might want to have your main Nagios server at wherever your building is, where you go to work every day, and you may want to put a Nagios server into a California office or into a Virginia office or into an Oregon office or into the EU or over in Asia or in South America, which is where Amazon has their data centers. You can use that as the monitoring host for the locations or for the devices and services that are nearest that, report that all back, get your Nagios Fusion going, and you've got a nice, easy, adaptable, scalable solution to deploying Nagios on a large scale. I'm not really here to talk about strategies. We're really just here to do it. So, as it said in our little presentation, oh man, come on. We're going to log in. We're going to create a new server. The rest of this, we're not even going to care about, so I'm just going to close this presentation entirely. Nice thing about Amazon or EC2 within Amazon is everything is pretty easy to do. You don't have to have any real systems administration knowledge to be able to turn up a new server. You don't have to know the difference between Linux running CentOS versus Linux running Debian. You don't have to know the difference between 32-bit or 64-bit. You only have to know what your particular application requires, and then you go say, I would like to go make a new instance. Couple different ways you can do this. If you are looking for a commodity that someone else has already created, just in the same way that VMware, you can go buy a VM already configured VM appliance that you can deploy. There's a marketplace for AWS instances that you can say, I'm going to be deploying a, I don't know, fill in the blank box. Quick, somebody name a software. I'm going to be deploying a web server that has specific criteria. I don't want to go configure it. Maybe somebody built one that looks like this already. So you can go to the marketplace and you can try to find one. We're just going to go build our own box. And we're going to use the classic wizard in this case. You can use the quick launch wizard. I wonder what that looks like. The classic wizard, the quick launch wizard, skips some of the steps that it assumes you know. So since I want to do this kind of more bare bones, we're going to use the classic wizard. And you just kind of click through till you get to what you want. For those of you that have not played with EC2 or other Amazon Web Services, they offer what they call a free tier, which if you use a certain class of machine or a certain class of some of their services and you're below particular thresholds in terms of storage or bandwidth and other things, you actually can use it free for, I think, a year. So if you just wanted to play, you can get a free instance, you can get free storage, you can get a free IP address, you can get a free something else. You can kind of put all those things together. You can't get that whole list from that first screen. You can't get everything for free, but you can at least get some stuff that lets you play around with it and figure out if it's right for you. Get into the API if you want to and figure out how to automate some things. Anything that's got these stars on them, these are the images that we can install. All of these starred images are the images that are qualified for that free tier. So if you just want to pop up a Linux box and play with it, this first one right here is an Amazon-specific Linux. AMI is their version of Amazon. I don't remember what the initials stand for, I'm sorry, but Amazon Master Image, I think is what it is. Don't quote me. But basically, this is the image of a box that they've saved that you can clone. So these AMIs are those base images that we can go either get from the marketplace or we can build ourselves. And you can see there's a Red Hat one, there's a SUSE Linux, there's Ubuntu, and then we flip into the non-free ones. And if you scroll down far enough, you'll see Windows boxes out here as well. Windows 2008 Server, various versions of that, 2012. And then, again, they give you access to the marketplace. If you have created your own images, for instance, this is one of our SmartVox-based servers is out here. This is kind of a development AWS installation for us. But this would be a, I don't know what the date is on that, August 13th. So this is about 2 months old now. This is one of our base images for one of our servers that we put in our development box. If we wanted to just create a new one of that, we could select this and clone it and be up and running in a couple minutes. But we're going to go back to our quick start. We're going to go select this free base model, basically, Linux box that Amazon has modified. We're just going to click this, we're going to select the 64-bit version. It asks us how many we want to run. We're going to run 1. But if you were deploying an infrastructure in this case and you knew you had 10 web servers and 14 application servers and 6 database servers or whatever, you can deploy them all at once here. This is the types of machines we want. So we can go anywhere from this micro instance all the way up to big-ass beefy is the last one, basically. Lots of processor, lots of memory, lots of I/O capabilities. But again, these are all virtual. And so when they talk about CPU units, these are, I can't remember now what it stands for, but this is their version of this ECU is Elastic Cloud Unit, I think. Again, don't quote me. But basically they're saying, if we could invent our own processor and deploy single units of those processors, then if you got a M1 small, you would be getting one of those processors. But they don't invent processors. They're not really selling just one processor. You're getting a slice of a virtual processor that's running on a physical machine. So they guarantee you that you'll get the performance equivalent of one of their processors, or 2 of their processors, or 16, or 26, or 35, or whatever these are. And you'll get them in the form of these cores, and you'll have this much memory. So if you need a huge box with a bunch of memory, with a bunch of processing, you go down to the bottom of this list. These are fairly expensive things to run. They're paid for by the hour that they're actually active, or you can pay for a contract that says, it's going to be my web server. I know I need it, so I'm going to buy a year-long contract, and I always will have it up. So you pay a little bit more for that upfront cost. You pay a little bit less for the per-hour cost than if you just did what we're doing now, which is saying, I just want a box. So I'm going to take that T1 Micro. It's going to cost me pennies per hour to run this. So for the duration of this program, it will cost me probably more time or more money to actually talk about it than it does to actually run it. Those zones that I was talking about earlier, these are basically data centers that are available in the different geographies. We don't really care about all these details right now. We just want to get a box up and running. But again, if you architected something where you needed either geographical basis or you need to have failover capabilities, you're going to want to architect your zone coverage, essentially, with the different machines in the different zones. So we'll just continue through most of this stuff. It's going to be pretty basic for what it is. I'm not going to wait for these things to load. They're basically coming up with base model images and RAM disks that they'll use for the base image. Because we're using the generic Amazon base image for Linux, we're not really changing anything because we're not really going to do anything super custom. We're just going to use it for a processor and for storage space for a little while, and then we're going to get rid of it. There's a lot of these options that you can do. The biggest one is what happens when you shut the machine down. Do you want it to just stop and it stays in your inventory and you pay a little bit if it's just there even if you're not using it? Or do you want to terminate it, which means, well, when it's done, I want you to kill it, make it disappear, take it out of my inventory, I'll never see it again, I don't get billed for it. We're just going to leave it at stop right now. We're going to continue. This is if we wanted to do some disk stuff. We're just going to take the standard 8 gig disk, basically. We can name the box. Let's call it something. I don't know, give me a random name, somebody. Fred, thanks. There we go. The name of the box will be Fred. Security information. We can create a SSH key pair. This will be the only access to the box. You will not have root access directly. You have to log in using an EC2 user to the box, and that user will only be allowed to log in through an SSH key. So if you don't have one, make one, download it, save it, keep it. If you already have one, you can choose one of the ones that you want to use. And if you really don't care to ever log into the box because you're using a base image that will just start something automatically and do work for you, you could continue without a key pair. So we're going to use some defaults here. We're going to use a default security group. These would be inbound firewall rules, basically. We're not going to get into it, but you have the ability to basically allow or block based on IP address and port. And you can group those into groups of rules, and you can allow either individual machines to have access to individual groups, or you can say every machine that's in this group has access to every other machine that's in this group. So if you structure your security correctly, you can get away with a lot of easy configuration that saves you a lot of headache down the line with security. So again, we're just going to go with the defaults here. It's going to say, are all these things correct? Bless you. Is this really what you want to do? And yes, it is. So we're going to launch it. So in the meantime, it says, your instances are now launching, yay. And we have this instance ID I546Fox712 Fox. This will be a unique instance within EC2 that identifies that box that we just turned on. And it says, if you really want to, you can go create some status alarms. Little do they know we're going to install Nagios. So in the meantime, you can see here's Fred. He's spinning away. He's in a pending state right now. Pretty much you'll see 4 states here. You'll see running, pending, stopped, or terminated. And you'll only see terminated for a little while until the Reapers come along and kill the stuff that's in your accounts. So while that's spinning away and he's in a running state now, so the box has been configured. You can imagine at this point, if you had console access, you'd see the dots and all the whatever it is that's starting as the Linux box is actually booting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to this handy-dandy cheat sheet that I have of commands that we're going to type, because I really didn't want to do all this off the top of my head. So we have logged into AWS, we have clicked on EC2, and we have created an instance. The next thing we need to know is how to access this instance. So we need its public IP. What Amazon does is they give each machine an internal IP address on a 10.IP, and they also give everything an external address. If you really need an external address that will be yours forever, no matter which machine it points to, you can make use of something they call Elastic IP, which says, I'm going to take a publicly addressable IP address, and I'm going to assign it to one of my instances. That way, if that instance ever changes, or if I need to point it to another instance, all I got to do is change which instance that IP address points to, and so now you can use that as your service address while the machines underneath it kind of change around. You only get 5 of those unless you pay for more, so plan well. So here's Fred. If we make this a little bit bigger down here. Fred has an IP address internally of 10.179.38.206. So you can use that if you're connecting machines internally so you don't go out and come back into the AWS platform. And this is his external address that we're going to want to grab, which is also available to us up here, which is easier to grab. So this is the name of the box that we just created out on the big bad public internet. So I'm going to flip over to my console. So this is just me on a shell server kind of thing that we run. And I'm using it here so that I have access to all my security keys, so I don't have to fool around with all that security stuff. So give me a second. Everybody familiar with SSH? Anybody not familiar with SSH? I don't want to make this a sysadmin class exactly, but if you're not, real quick, I need to give it a name so I can log in as EC2-user. That's the only user that will allow at this point. Obviously, you can do this sort of differently than I'm doing it, but and I need to tell it what key I'm using. This is the key that I've previously created, downloaded, and saved on this machine that I allowed access when I was creating that instance, if you think back in time here. And then we're just going to SSH to the box. Poof, we're on. We are EC2 user at internal IP address. We don't care about internal IP address for the most part, and we almost always want to be root. EC2 user and root are the only users on this box. There is no, again, there is no access to root unless you have access to EC2 user at this point. We can change that to our heart's content. We now have root on the box. We can re-rig the SSH daemon so that we can have access with passwords. We can delete the EC2 user. We can do whatever we want. But we're just walking through sort of monkey see, monkey do kind of activities here, so we're not really going to do anything with the box other than some basic stuff. Configuring firewall, this is the firewall within Amazon, that security group I was talking about earlier. I didn't know for sure if it would allow the IP address from here to let me SSH, so that's why I went through our little Bastion shell server host, so I didn't have to worry about all that. So we skipped that step, and we're now logging into our server. So the first thing we want to do is we want to update some things and get some software out there, because we're going to go compile Nagios. So make this easy on myself, I'm cutting and pasting. And so while that's off doing its thing, you'll notice it's incredibly fast. That's because Amazon has their own repositories that they've created with the software in it. And since you're on their internal network, which has some really big data pipes, downloading that software is incredibly fast. So this update, as you can see, we just downloaded 163 meg in 17 seconds. 11 megabytes per second, that's pretty good, right? A lot better than going out to mirrors.centos.org and waiting for them to find the nearest one. So while that's happening, let's go back and look what actually we did. We took so the base image that Amazon runs is based on CentOS. So we're using yum and other related commands to do installations. If you picked one of their other base images, you'd be using apt or whatever is appropriate for that software. So in this case, we're installing the development tools and the development libraries and the web server, because we're going to install Apache so that we can see it. We're going to install C so that we can compile it, and there's some extra stuff in the development libraries there that we need to make sure everything works. So while that finishes its task, we're almost there. This is what they call a micro instance. Don't let the name fool you. Micro is basically almost referring to its memory as opposed to its processing capability. You have access to one ECU as a micro instance. But if the physical box that you're running on doesn't have contention for resources, they'll let you burst up to 2 for short periods of time. So if I'm on a physical box that nobody else is really using right now, I actually get a fair amount of processing capability on this micro instance. But a fee? No, how about free? As you can see, I only have about 600 meg worth of memory available to me, not including swap, if I were to add some. So, you know, this is a small box. It's very functional for what we're going to be doing. Your mileage may vary if you're going to do something else with it. So the next step, we're going to install some specific stuff here. This is going to put the GD libraries out there, PHP and the PHP development libraries, so that we can go and run the CGIs that Nagios provides. This takes, there you go, almost no time whatsoever. And I've done this, I've structured this in a way so that if you're familiar with Yum, the Yellow Dog Update Manager, you can say, I want to go install or upgrade or whatever. And if you don't have that -y in there, it will say, hey, is this really what you want to do? Since I didn't want to sit here and hit Y all the time, I've structured these commands so that you can just copy and paste literally through this list until you get to some of these ones down here that says, press enter once, you know, things like this. So for a while here, we're just going to literally be copying and pasting from this spreadsheet into our command prompt on the shell, our shell prompt on the box to install these things. So next thing, I don't really think this is necessary by any means, but I'm kind of fastidious about this. I want to update to make sure we've got the latest versions of whatever it is we've installed on this box. Amazon's pretty good. They update their base images pretty regularly. So you know, it's a CentOS base, so they're coming off of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and they update their trees, their repositories pretty frequently. So as you can see, there was only, what was that, 5 things that needed to be updated. And then because we updated something, let's reboot it. Reboot takes not that long, all things considered. If we flip back to our list of instances here, so I'll get rid of this. These little boxes took me a while to figure out what they meant. It's kind of like saying, I want if you can see it, there's a little bit of white there at the bottom. That means I want this bottom section to take up just a little bit of the screen. And then there's the one that has a little bit more white, and there's one that has a lot of white. It took me a long time to figure out what these things were. So anyway, little aside there into my psyche. As we refresh this, so if I had done it sooner, you would have seen that Fred was in a stopped state and then a running state, or a starting state, and now he's back in a running. But it really does only take a minute. And then we're basically back onto the box. We've got to wait for SSH to start. And there we are. So we're back on the box. We're going to go back to our list of commands. So we're going to go download Nagios and some other stuff, but of course we want to be root when we do this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go get Nagios. So we're doing this all building out a user local source. So again, I wanted to make this less about me typing and more about what we're actually trying to accomplish. So I apologize. I will make these, they're not in the slide deck, but if you want to email me or whatever, or maybe I'll put them in the, put them on the little USB thing that they're going to take all the slides from. So these steps will be in there. Basically, just doing a lot of multiple commands on one line kind of thing so that these things fly through pretty quickly. So we downloaded Nagios. We downloaded Nagios plugins. If we look at it closely, you'll see these are Nagios 3.5.1. I've heard somewhere that there's a new version out. I'm really not sure. I wanted to go with Nagios Core 4 for today's little demo, so we're sticking with 3.5. I think actually there's even a version newer than 3.5.1, but it is what it is. So we downloaded it. Now we're going to go install it. So we're just going to follow through this. This is just moving through the tree that we created. Before we install it, we want to add the Nagios user. So command line, if you do any real systems administration and you don't know how to do command line shell access to some of these commands, I strongly suggest that you learn how to do them. Because this entire process, like I said, if I took out the comments and everything, is a shell script that can go do everything. You don't need any human to be involved in this process if you wanted to. So as opposed to going through an X interface and clicking on, I want to add a user, and a clicky, 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 and where'd my mouse go, and all this kind of stuff. Command line is the way to go, in my opinion. So we've added a Nagios user. We're going to lock the password, so just in case somebody tries to log in, that's not going to work. And now we're going to go configure Nagios. So this is just a straight configure, make, install operation that we're going to perform. Because we did install the GD libraries, we're not going to get any complaints from the configure. It's just going to go and say, ready. If you wanted to do something special, obviously, it's your box. Go install Nagios where you want to, or whatever it is you want to do. Next up, make all. And eventually, we're going to do just install everything. So again, the make, I'll take a quick break, grab something to drink here. The make doesn't take very long because all things considered, the box has a fair amount of processing power. I was actually surprised when I did this the first time running through it for timing. It took me about 15 minutes, 17 minutes, something in that time frame to just whip through my commands and go from empty box, bare metal, to Nagios. So without me talking, this goes a lot faster. While this is going on, does anybody have any questions so far? Real quick ones? Oh, hang on, we got to get a microphone for you. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
Having a fixed permanent IP, is that a paid for?
You get 5 with your account.
Okay, you answered my question.
Okay. You can lobby for more, and lobby usually involves money. So there's the end of our make, and now we're going to do our installs, and we're just making install, and we're doing, as you can see, the basic install for the configs, for the initialization. I don't know how many of you can actually read this out there. The command mode configs, web config, and we're installing exfoliation for the web interface as opposed to classic GUI, because I got tired of looking at a black screen with green text. And there we go. We're done with that. If I'd actually looked at this and we watched it, you would have seen no errors. All right, we actually have Nagios installed. So if we wanted to do the classic GUI, we could go back with that. Plugins, same basic process. We're going to go back to where the plugins were installed. We're going to untar them. We're going to cd to their directory. And in this case, we're just going to chain this all into one command, configure, make, install. So here we are, configure, make, install. Does anybody not know what the double ampersand means? Okay, double ampersand there between the commands says, if the first command succeeded, then run the next command. So this is a chain of commands that says, if the configure worked, then run the make. If the make worked, then run the make install. Quick little side note, if you do true and something, then that will be, the something will be executed. If you do false or something, the something will be executed. So you can chain your commands together that way if you want to. Did you have something else? No, it's like yeah. Yeah. So I'll skip the microphone for you. It's just saying it was just like command or C++ and some other languages, where you can see obviously it's a logical construct. At the shell level, every command returns a value. If the value is 0, it's considered a what is it? 0 is success, and anything else is failure. So returning true is a success, and therefore you have a logical and, if you think of it that way, I'm going to do something else. And at the same time, if you say, well, if I failed, whether it was intentional or otherwise, if the thing came back with a failure, then run something else. So if you had a construct like this, false and something, that something won't run, because false will come back false. Again, a big fan of chaining commands so that things just kind of work. So here's our or our configure, make install. Everything looks like it worked. Groovy. We're going to go update HT password file for Nagios. Scroll up a little bit here. We're going to use the Nagios admin user. So we just created the file, we updated a password. We use any password we want. We're going to use welcome. Quick, hack the box. And this is the one cheat that I have. If you look at the command I just typed, you'll see that we just went into, it might be easier to see it here, cd to user local source Nagios etc, or user local Nagios etc objects, the default configuration location, and we removed a file called demo.cfg if it was already there, and then we went and grabbed one called demo.cfg from a URL that's on our server. And this is my way of cheating to put some very basic information into our command, to put commands, host, service, and escalation capabilities into Nagios without having to go through each thing. I'm not trying to teach you how to configure Nagios. Just trust me. This is a host with a service, with a user, with a contact mechanism that utilizes something that will make use of Twitter later. So that's all that really is to get something out there that we can monitor and break and have it notify. Next up, let's make sure that our HTTP server is turned on when the box starts and make sure that it's turned on now. We're going to make sure that Nagios starts when the box starts. And we're going to do a quick sanity check. Whew, that worked. Because I like to do sanity checks often and I like to see a little bit more detail than just what you get out of check config, I make something called, in my head anyway, I think of this as check Nagios, but I don't like to spell things if I don't have to, so CNAG, which is just verifying, it's doing the verification phase that the startup does, and just make sure that I don't have any problems. So no warnings, no errors. My demo.cfg file looks good, except it's actually not configured to start yet. And let's go start up Nagios. Done. Now, if I go back to Fred here within EC2 and grab his name, there's our basic web server running. We haven't done anything with it. And because we chose defaults for the Nagios install, we should have a access prompt here. We use Nagios admin and welcome. Nope, we're not going to remember that. And there we are. Yay, Nagios is running. If we take a quick look at what services we have configured, we have bare bones what comes with Nagios configured in that localhost.cfg file. So that's most of the battle right there. We have successfully installed Nagios on an EC2 Amazon Web Service instance. But wait, there's more. Now we're going to go install the Check MK server. Anybody familiar? Is anybody not familiar with Check MK or Live Status? Okay, Check MK is kind of a plugin that gives you a really easy way to do some fairly consistent, I don't want to say that they're trivial, but they're the things that you usually want to check. It kind of just handles for you by including itself in the Nagios configuration and has its own way of configuring things. So all you got to do is add a host to its configuration file and install the agent on the host, and then you can monitor it directly with Nagios without having to really muck with Nagios. But the big thing that Check MK does is, well, you can use it without having Check MK installed, is the live status interface to Nagios. So instead of this screen that, this one that everybody's used to looking at from Nagios, you get the live status screen, which we'll take a look at in a minute after we successfully install it. So in order to install live status, we needed some preliminaries like Python. And I could have installed these things earlier on in the script, but I wanted to logically keep them separate. The only reason we're installing Python is so we can install live status. Sorry for talking fast. Got a little bit to get through here. Check MK, check underscore MK. We're going to go cd to user local source. We're going to download, I think, the latest version. I'm pretty sure 1.2.2 is the latest version, but that might be off. Or the latest stable release. Download's done. Same basic concepts as before. We're going to untar it. We're going to go into its directory. We're going to run its setup. And as you can see in my instructions, we're going to hit enter 29 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we just took all the defaults. And we're going to proceed with this installation. And it's going to take a minute to go compile. So I'm going to skip ahead to get ready for something else, assuming that we have time for it. We're going to take Twitter, and we're going to use Twitter to do some notifications. So first thing I want to do is I want to sign out of me, and sign back in as SmartVox. And we'll sign in as SmartVox. So the reason we need to do this is because at some point in the near future, we're going to actually tweet, and we're going to authorize that TTYLTR application to be able to tweet for us. So you need to be logged in to Twitter in order to do the OAuth authentication thing that they're going to ask for. It'll all make sense when you see the screen. So this guy's still going. All things considered, I think it's funny that this is the part that takes the longest, is in getting live status and everything installed. So live status is installed, it's finished. We've hit enter 29 times. We've hit Y and hit enter. We're going to go install the agent. So the Check MK server, I call it a server. It's not really a server. It's all the configuration management tools that you need to install on the Nagios side. But there's also an agent that gets distributed with the server. And it's the agent that runs on the machine that returns passive check results back to Nagios. So we have to install it on the local machine so that it can use itself. You can install that agent on any box you want to install it on, Linux at least box that you want to install it on, and it will do stuff. It runs out of inetd, so we need to kickstart inetd. And some people that I had walk through this to make sure that I wasn't making some assumptions about how the system was set up said, uh-oh, you have a problem. It failed. It's red. Red's bad. Red means stop. We weren't running xinetd prior to me typing this command, so stopping it failed. So that's normal. And starting it was OK. So this is actually a successful thing. I actually wrote these directions trying to make sure that I wasn't assuming any particular state of the machine. So you could apply this to a machine that's already running, for instance. So we're going to make some minor changes to the way things are done in Check MK. And all we've really done here is, instead of me editing a file, I'm just using a sed command to go add localhost to the list of hosts that it monitors. We're going to do the same thing to Nagios so that it's, instead of monitoring in the nagios.cfg file, instead of using localhost.cfg, it's going to use that demo file that we downloaded a little bit ago. Again, I'm not trying to really teach you what these things are all about. We're just trying to get through this. CMK is the Check MK sort of, I don't know why -I is used for what it's doing, but to me this is the inventory. Here, there we go. This is going through the configuration file that we just made for Check MK, and it goes and figures out what the machine is capable of returning based on the agent that was running on it. So it found these various checks running on localhost, and now we need to go output this information into the configuration files that it put in the Nagios world. And we're going to go hack some protections real quick so that people can write what they need to write and read what they need to read. And we're going to make sure that Nagios is still good to go. That was our check config. Make sure that it's really still good to go. No warnings, no errors. We're going to restart Nagios, and we're going to restart the HTTPD server because we made some changes to the config file under the hood there. So now when we go back to Nagios, where's Nagios, and we reload this page for the services, services, you're going to see now we have an NW 2013 demo page. Maybe you can see it a little better with a root partition. This was from our demo file. All this localhost stuff, this is no longer the Nagios localhost. This is Check MK's version of localhost. So you'll see things like interface 1, for instance, is checking inbound, outbound on our ETH0 interface. I didn't have to do that with Nagios. If I wanted to do it, I'd have to go make a check, figure out how to get that data. Check MK does these sorts of things by itself. Look into Check MK if you're not using it. We're not going to worry about it right now. Next thing we're going to do is check it out. We already did that. Now we're going to go install TTYLTR. So this is the best Twitter client ever for the CLI. If you haven't used this and you use Twitter, get it. It's just a shell script that gets downloaded, and we're going to move it to user local bin. We're going to change some protections, and we're going to update our own path so that user local bin is included. And now we're going to run TTYLTR. So this is the part where we need to already be logged into Twitter, because this, and the next thing when I hit OK or enter, is going to give me an API URL that I need to go use to authenticate with my logged in Twitter account, which is the Smartbox. I will authorize that. Now I need this number to go put back into what TTYLTR was asking me. So I can't do this like this. So this is 916. This is an image. I can't just copy paste. 1738. And if I got it right and I didn't wait too long, because this will time out, you'll see, hey, success. So now if I type TTYLTR, it will log me in. It will download any direct messages and the last things that are on my, what you call it, the Twitter timeline thing or whatever. And here's all the stuff. So this is me on a command line version of Twitter. And it has real-time updates and other things. We're not interested in any of that. What we are interested in is not XMAP. We're interested in this. So we signed into the appropriate Twitter account. We pressed enter once. We went to the URL provided. We clicked authorize app. We punched the numbers back in. And now we can test, I think, to make sure it worked. Click. Hey, I got some tweets. All right, so we just advertised for Nagios a little bit. We just advertised for TTYLTR a little bit. We just advertised for myself a little bit. So now we have a command line interface to Twitter. So we're going to move. It creates this TTYLTR key file. We're going to move it to the Nagios libexec directory, and we're going to rename it so that it ends in the word Nagios, so that we know that it's the Nagios user. We're going to change own it to be owned by the Nagios user, because otherwise they won't be able to access it. And we're going to go download something called send Twitter from my corporate account, which is, more tweets. Really all it is says, I want to go find that key file that we just made that's going to end in the word Nagios, and then it sends something out using TTYLTR that says, using that key file, get your status from the command prompt, or from standard in, and do it all quietly. So you can imagine where this is going. So we need to change protections on it. We need to restart Nagios for, I don't really know why, to be honest. And now when we go back into our Nagios configuration, go back here to Nagios core, we're really only going to be interested in this this root partition, which is the one that we're going to break here. So if I click on the root partition, we have disk OK. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see. We're only really looking at, it's green. Everybody agree it's green? Great. So now we're going to break it. So we're going to go use this command. I'll make this a little bit bigger for you too. So we're going to remove a file that may or may not be there in /temp called big file. And then we're going to use this little utility called fallocate, which just allocates space but doesn't actually create the file. And we're going to create a 5900 meg file. And the reason we're going to create that 5,900 meg file is because we have about 6,000 meg free, 6 gig. So we're going to rm temp big file and go f allocate big file, and now we have 97% free. And if we flip back to here and we reschedule the next check of the service and we commit that and we wait patiently and we get rid of the fruit fly, and there it is. There's our Twitter alert. So we just got alerted. Email might have gone out through Eventum, whatever it is, but bottom line, we just alerted through Twitter that we had a problem, and your new Nagios server will cost you about $9 a month to run. So congratulations. We've just gone from bare virtual metal to Nagios with Check MK, live status, TTYLTR, Twitter-based notifications. So instead of worrying about contact groups and contacts and escalations and who's going to do what and everything, you go make yourself 50 different Twitter accounts, and you tell people which ones to subscribe to and follow, and then you use the email address within the contact group to tell your send Nagios script which of the key files to use. So you go make multiple key files, and now you can send one to your NOC, you can send one to your employees, you can send one to your investors, you can send one to your system admins, to the network engineers, to the security guys, whatever it is, based on what Twitter feed they follow. Forget email. It's the wave of the past. Let's go social media for the future. So that's about it. Questions? I know I went through a lot of stuff really fast, but like I said, my goal was to get from there to here. The details in the middle might be a little fuzzy, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Yeah, the question was if I'll put the script where you guys can access it. I will give you this spreadsheet so that you can put that on a USB drive. And that way, when the notes get distributed back out, if you can make sure that those two things get connected. Yeah, whatever is easiest. It'll either be part of the presentation that gets distributed, or it'll be distributed with it, however that goes. I'm not going to take these configuration files or anything off of our web server, so they'll be there until we die. So you can happily grab those at your leisure.
Have you found any problems with the character limits with Twitter? I mean, meaning alerts?
Yes. Obviously, Twitter has a character limit on it. This send Twitter, or this send Twitter account thingy that we have here, really, this is it right there. That's the entire thing that it does, is it says, go use TTYLTR to go do the thing. We're not currently, with this configuration, worrying about making sure that that thing is going to fit within the 140 character limit. TTYLTR does. So if you actually look at what the alert was that came through, you're going to see, I don't know if you guys are following it here or not. Where is it? Somebody help me out here. Why don't I have it? Okay, so this was just a basic, bare bones, generic configuration Nagios, and the fruit flies drive me crazy. So problem, root partition, NW 2013 demo, critical, disk critical, free space, 240 meg, 3%, inode equals 85%. So we got everything we need to know. Box, critical, disk. If you want to start worrying about cutting things off and reformatting, you do that in your command script so that your printf pipe command is got the appropriate information in the way you want it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Eric or comments? Well, thank you for your time, Eric.
Thanks.
Give him a big round of applause.
I do have one real quick thing. Don't turn off the mic. Sorry, I should have done this earlier. So I'm done with this box. I don't need to shut it down. I don't need to do anything. I can just go here into my AWS. I can right-click on it, and I can terminate it, and it will die when I say yes. So it's going to shut it down. It's going to kill it. It's going to terminate it. It's going to remove it from my account, and you'll never see it again. Hope you didn't have anything you wanted to say. That's it. Thanks.